Hello, everybody. Hi. Oh, I see we're live. Wonderful. Hi, everybody. It's great to see you here today. Welcome to the first day of LlewellynCon. I'm Enfys Book. I'm super stoked to be here. This is one of my favorite events of the year. So thank you so much to Llewellyn for having me. I'm Enfys Book. For those of you who haven't met me before, my pronouns are they, them. I am based in Frederick, Maryland in the United States. I have written 3 books for Llewellyn and contributed to several others. My most recent book is called Queer Rites. It is a magical grimoire to honor your milestones with pride, and that's largely the focus of this presentation. I also wrote Queer Kabbalah back in 2022 and co-wrote Sagittarius Witch with Ivo Dominguez Jr. as part of the Witch's Sun Sign series. So I just want to invite you all as we get started to just take a moment and kind of take a breath together. Like if you want to, close your eyes or take to a half-lidded gaze and just breathe deeply in and out. Because I don't know about you, but I need a lot of deep breaths these days. So I'm just going to take a moment to take one here. So this session is going to be a little taste of the contents of my book, Queer Rites, a magical grimoire to honor your milestones with pride. And I encourage you, as you already are, to be active in the chat, especially if I'm listing examples. Please feel free to throw out your own. I'm going to go really fast. This is a very condensed version of a workshop that's normally 75 minutes long. So instead of having a lot of conversation, I'm largely going to be lecturing, but we'll have about 10 minutes for questions at the end. Also, yeah, hey, everyone in chat, everyone's being so kind. Thank you so much. It's great to see you all. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk a bit about queer rites of passage, what and why, mundane and magic, how to get started creating a queer rite of passage ritual, so should you so choose, some fun ideas for those rituals, and what to do after your ritual, which is very important. And so just so you know, this is what we're going to be covering. And then after all that, I will be taking questions. So let's dive in and just talk about rites of passage generally to start out with. So why don't you throw out in the chat some examples of a rite of passage that you go through in life? Things like, getting married, getting your driver's license, like milestone birthdays, having your first child, graduating, things like that. Feel free to throw out other examples there. But when we think about these rites of passage that we go through, what purpose does that serve? Like, what does that do in our lives? Usually it symbolizes a moment of big change or growth. But I would also say that these rites of passage are anchors to the self. Now, what I mean by that is a rite of passage tells you where you've been, where you are, and gives some hint as to where you're going. It gives you something to hang on to that's a part of you because you've experienced it. Yeah, loving the examples in the chat. Keep those going. That's great. So when we're talking about queer rites of passage specifically, we have a few examples. And again, feel free to throw some out as well in the chat. So some queer folks experience some rites of passage that are unique to the queer journey, or at least that's the context around these rites of passage is heavily informed by the person's experience as a queer person. So I have a few here. Feel free to throw them out. Yep, cracking that egg I see in the chat. Coming out. Yep, this is already said in the chat. This is the one most people think of when they think of a queer rite of passage, coming out. But there's a lot more. Taking your first dose of hormone replacement therapy, or maybe getting gender affirmation surgery. These are huge milestones for some people. Changing your name or your pronouns. I've been through those. Those were definitely big milestone moments for me. Going to your first queer space or event, celebrating chosen family, and there's so many more. Yeah, your first queer date, that first crush that makes you realize you're queer. Yes, absolutely. So we've got a lot of these. And what I'm inviting you to consider today and through the book is consider why you might want to celebrate a queer rite of passage with a magical ritual. Because you're going to go through the rite of passage whether you have a ritual with it or not, right? The rite of passage is its own thing. But you have the opportunity as a magical person, I'm going to use that term broadly, to honor and make sacred our rites of passage throughout our lives. Uh, there are a lot of reasons why you might want to create a ritual container for that rite of passage. The first one, which I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, is the concept of sovereignty. Now, this is a buzzword that comes up in magical practice here and there. What I mean when I say sovereignty is you belong to you, right? And having that sense of self-ownership right now, especially, is very important. This is part of embracing your self-worth and your own bodily autonomy. And being able to do that in a ritual context around a rite of passage, I think, is really important. Rituals speak to all our parts of self in a way that other experiences do not do in the same way. A ritual gives you that chance to step into your power on your terms, which may happen as part of your rite of passage anyway, but this is an opportunity for that. It also can help you build the confidence to face challenging experiences. A lot of the rites of passage we go through throughout life, whether queer or outside the queer community, are scary. They're big moments. There's a lot riding on them, and a lot changes. So having that moment to build that confidence and acknowledge your own personal sovereignty is a really beautiful way to approach those moments. Another reason you might want to do a ritual around a rite of passage is for healing, processing, and or integration. So what I mean by this is that perhaps, when you are coming out, for example, there's a certain amount of grief and healing cycle that goes with that. And having a container, an opportunity to feel the healing of that moment of clarity is really beautiful. Having time to process what it means in a ritual container is also really helpful. And integrating these changes in a very intentional way is another opportunity you have through ritual. Another reason you might want to do a ritual is to celebrate. A lot of these rites of passage, not every single one of them is great, but a lot of them are things that are worth celebrating. Whether you're celebrating a relationship, like maybe chosen family or your first queer relationship, or maybe you're celebrating a big change, like, hey, I changed my name. I kind of want to throw a party about it. I want to acknowledge this in a way that containerizes it in something very positive. Because one of the things I want to note is that for many of us, especially those of us who have gone through these rites of passage many years ago, before this book came out, many years before that, this is the book I wish I'd had 20 years ago. But for those of us who've come out, a lot of times our experiences with these rites of passage is defined by how other people respond to them. And it's not always a positive response. So for many people, they come out, they get thrown out of the house, or they come out, they lose a job, or, they transition their gender and they lose a bunch of friends. And that's how they remember those rites of passage. What I'm saying with this book is that, you can't control how other people are going to receive this, but to set a container for yourself saying, this is a good thing for me, and I'm acknowledging that in a ritual context, whether through celebration or through simply acknowledging the sacredness of that experience, is really powerful. The other thing that you can do with a ritual is to catalyze a change. So maybe you are, you're like, okay, I think I know who I am inside, and it's different than who I always thought I was. I need some guidance for how to approach this and how to actually live this part of myself. And I'm going to do a ritual where I call in the queer ancestors, where I, maybe do some path working or a journey to help myself accept this thing and figure out the best next steps. I think ritual can be very powerful for that. The ultimate thing you're hoping for from a ritual created around a rite of passage is a long-term positive impact on your life. Okay. Also, I'm loving the chat. I can't fully pay attention to it if I'm going to get through everything, so apologies if I'm not responding to everything right now, but thank you for talking with each other because this is great. So, how do you start writing a queer rite of passage ritual? This is something I ran into sort of with panic when I changed my name. I had been writing public ritual for 8 years at that point, and I had no idea how to start writing a ritual for my own name change. So I had to call a friend. I had to get help to do that. And so I'm going to give you a cheat sheet to start. Again, like we could do an entire long full day class on ritual writing. This is going to be very condensed. So if you want additional information to this, I would say refer to the book, or also Phoenix LaFay has an excellent book on writing and performing rituals that actually work that Llewellyn published a year or two ago. So, cheat sheet, here we go. Number one, start with a goal. What are you trying to do with your ritual? Regardless of what kind of ritual it is, I think you should always start with what is our goal? Sometimes the goal is we're celebrating this holiday. Sometimes the goal is we are trying to affect political change. Sometimes the goal is I just want to honor this thing in myself. Like it can be a big goal, small goal, whatever it is, but this should inform how the rest of your ritual is written. Next, think about who can help. Now, this doesn't mean you have to do a group ritual. In fact, almost every single ritual in the book Queer Rites is designed to be performed by yourself and has adaptations for performing with a group if you want. But I wanted it to be a very accessible experience for people, regardless if they have a group they practice with or not. Because not everyone is lucky enough to have a group that they practice magic with. So who can help could be people, but it could also be spirits. What spirits would be aligned to this kind of work? Which deities, if you work with deities? Which elements? Maybe which plants? Which planets? Which zodiac signs? Which ancestors? I mentioned working with queer ancestors before. Ancestors are not limited to people you are related to. You have ancestors of affinity and choice as well. So if you identify as LGBTQ, etc., you have as ancestors, everyone in history who has that identity or who identifies under the queer umbrella. So tapping into those powers in these rituals can be extremely helpful, and you can get really good guidance from them. Next tip is to make a plan and write it down. Apologies to all of my ecstatic improvisational friends here. You do you. For me, I need to write a plan because for me, the energy will drain out of my ritual if I have to stop and figure out what I'm doing next. So once you have an idea of what your goal is and who maybe you want to involve, start jotting down ideas and like, here are the pieces that are going to make this magic work. Part of that plan should involve timing. Now, I'm a practical pagan. The most important piece of timing is when do you have time to do it? When do you have space where you will be undisturbed for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, where you are not going to have people barging in to interrupt you, where you can breathe and focus? That is the most important part of ritual timing, is when does it work for you and your schedule? If you have flexibility around that, there are some other things you could consider. So maybe you want to time it around your birthday. Maybe that's a significant time for what you're trying to do. Maybe you want to do it during Pride. Happy Pride Month, everybody. Maybe you want to do it on the anniversary of something else that has happened to you to tie into the energy of that. You can also, of course, being magical people, you've got all kinds of astrological things you can work with. Looking at the phase of the moon. Is it new? Is it full? Do I want a waxing energy, a waning energy? Do I want to increase something or bring something into being? Or am I trying to shed something else? You know, looking at what sign the moon is in. If there's some astrology fans out there, you have a huge toolkit for finding like the best optimal time to do a ritual, whether it's your natal transits, whether it's specific planets and specific signs. You've got all kinds of options, but I will caution you that the perfect is the enemy of the done. I would rather somebody do a ritual at the worst astrological time, as long as it's a time that works for them, than to not do the ritual at all, or to put it off for a year because they're waiting for just the right time. Do it. Find what works best and go from there. The magic will still work. It's great if you have all of the vibe of the universe behind you, but if you cannot get that, you can still do magic. It's okay. I'm giving you permission. A part of your plan should include, how are you going to raise energy? So a lot of us work with what I'm going to call the IKEA model of energy, where you have a projective thing and then a container for that thing. Tab A into slot B makes magic. So you want to raise some energy, and then you have to put it someplace for the magic to work. So raising energy can look a lot of different ways. It can look like chanting, drumming, singing. It can look like raising your own emotional energy. You probably, if you're doing a big rite of passage, you probably have some feelings about it. Put those feelings into what you are doing. Pour that in. Sometimes I will do workings by literally like holding my chalice to my heart and pouring the energy from my heart into that chalice. Another way to raise energy is to raise your consciousness. So a lot of times in rituals, this looks like path workings, journey work, something where you are taking yourself up on the astral plane. That is another great way to raise energy. So then what action is going to accomplish that goal? You've raised that energy. Where are you directing it? What are you doing? This could look like creating a talisman, charging a sigil, burning a candle, doing divination, scrying, reading cards, burning something. I'm a big fan of, burn a piece of paper to get rid of something. And then the last piece to think about is, what materials do you need? And I would encourage you to use personal artifacts and comfort objects in addition to any magical tools that you have. So having comfort objects nearby, especially if you expect to have big emotions about this, is really helpful. Don't be shy about having your favorite soft cardigan on, having, a stuffed animal, or having time afterwards to, pet your cat or your dog, whatever is going to be soothing. My main little tip with all this is not on the slide, but as much as possible, try to engage all three parts of yourself at once. I use a 3-part self model. So the lower self needs sensory elements, have some sensory things, smells, taste, touch, etc. The middle self needs structure, so that's where that plan comes in. And your higher self needs some kind of connection with the numinous. Putting those 3 things together makes for good ritual. I've got some fun and creative ideas for your ritual, and then a couple words on what to do afterward, and then I'm going to open it for questions. I'm hoping, since we started a few minutes late, they'll let me run just a little bit late. So some ideas for your ritual involve food. I am a big foodie. So I think food, we think of it in terms of offerings, but it can also be part of how the magic is created. So one of the rituals in my book involves writing your pronouns with writing icing on a cookie and eating that cookie. You are ingesting those pronouns. You are making them part of yourself. If there are kitchen witches in the audience, which inevitably there are, creating a magical meal could be that ritual. Like, you are ingesting into yourself the things you are trying to bring into yourself to get you through what you're doing. Make a craft. I was a brownie back in the day. I like making crafts. The act of creating a thing that you can use outside of ritual is potent, whether it's a charm, a talisman, a painting, something you can wear, or even a fidget toy. One of the rituals in my book has you creating a fidget toy to bring to your first queer space or event. Glam it up. Spend time in ritual doing your hair, makeup, or clothes in a way that affirms what you are celebrating. Planting a seed. Planting something and nurturing it as part of continuing the magical work after the ritual is very powerful. Take a hike, get outside, make a literal journey part of your metaphysical journey. Just be careful, obey local laws, etc. I know crossroads are very potent. Please don't stand in the middle of a highway crossroads to try to do magic. Bad idea. and then burn it all down. I'd said before I like burning things. Again, be careful. Do not do it near drapes or anything else that is flammable. Make sure you have good heat resistant, surroundings for it. But I don't know about you, but this is definitely a mood right now. So what to do after ritual? We have some things. So after ritual, I would say is just as important as during. First thing, and I talk about this in every book I have written, ground yourself after ritual. And what I mean by that is put yourself back into your body in whatever way works for you. It's super easy to get hooked on the awesome feeling of connecting with the numinous, but we have to live here on this plane. So it's important after ritual, have a little something to eat, a little something to drink, move your body around, remind yourself that you are a being in a corporeal state to help you do what you need to do in this world. Record the experience in some way. People will say journal, journal, journal. But it doesn't have to look like I'm writing in a notebook with a pen. You can journal by recording yourself speaking into your phone, like have a recording device. You can journal, you can record the experience by creating art. You can record the experience by, jotting something in a notepad app on your phone. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but it's important to capture the experience because those experiences fade from memory very quickly, and you are going to want to review that at some point. Have a friend on call or honestly a care team on call if needed, especially if you're going through something that could be quite difficult. I think at minimum, let a friend know that you are going to do this ritual at this day and time, and would they be available for a call afterward or, to text or whatever is comfortable to you, just having a space to process what you've just been through. And if you have the blessing of working with mental health care professionals and they're chill with magical work, being able to process this with them afterward can be helpful. Also look to clergy, mentors, like anyone in your life who you think would be a valuable sounding board can be very helpful in helping you process these experiences. And also have some aftercare prepared if you need it. This is where I was talking about if you want to have some time cuddling your pets after the ritual, maybe some comfort TV, maybe a favorite snack, things that will just be comforting and bring you back into a place where you can move forward. And then feed the work. Much as if I were to do a spell to get a new job, but I never sent out any resumes, it would make it very hard for the magic to do its thing. You want to do things in the mundane world that support the work that you have done in the ritual. So for example, if you have done a ritual to change your pronouns and then you never tell anybody that you have new pronouns, that's going to make the magic difficult to work. So think about ways you can do stuff in the mundane world that will support that. I also recommend if you do work with the queer ancestors to maybe make a contribution or take a political action on their behalf as a way for their influence to continue throughout the world. Okay, we're finally at questions. Thank you for bearing with me. I've seen a lot of fantastic conversation in chat. So I am going to just kind of look through, throw questions into chat. I'm happy to answer them. Yes, absolutely use plushies instead of actual pets. I am a big fan. I have a giant squishmallow for this purpose. I also have 2 cats, but they don't always want to be hugged. So having the squishmallow is helpful. Do I have any marriage rituals in the book? Yes. In fact, Storm Fairy Wolf wrote a fantastic ritual. It's a hand fasting ritual for 2 or more. So folks who are polyamorous and maybe have a larger group than just 2 people forming a bond, this ritual can adapt for any number of people, or you can use it for just 2. It's really up to you. But it's a very queer inclusive ritual with a lot of really great ideas. Yes, great question, Jen. Thank you. I'm seeing if I can scroll back in the chat because I have seen a couple of things here. Yeah, Phoenix LaFay does have incredible books. And Steph, yeah, I feel you on coming out and having parents be confused. I definitely relate to that. Do we have rituals for social justice? Yes. First protest is definitely a milestone. There is a ritual in the book for to do before you go to your first political action or take your first political action, whether it's calling a legislator or going to a protest. It is a ritual designed specifically to call in the spirits of the queer ancestors to help protect and guide you through that experience, and also to give you the courage you need to do that, because it can be scary to do that for the first time. Oh, thank you, Jessica. That's very kind of you to say. I'm really glad that you found this helpful. Ritual for divorce and reclaiming self after years of abuse. Yet not specifically in this one, because I think that's for a broader audience than just the queer community. And I really, just to have a defined scope for the book, I focused on things that were largely unique to the queer experience. But there are rituals for entering into your first queer relationship and calling in the things that you want from your relationship. Daryl, yeah, that is a tough thing. Any advice? I would say be very gentle with yourself and understand that you belong to you and you are the only one who gets to decide who you are. Nobody else gets to decide that for you. Even in the current political climate where there's a lot of pushing to erase people and to tell us who we are, at the end of the day, only you get to decide that within yourself. I would recommend seeking out, if you are able to get mental health care to help you through that change. It can be really, really helpful. There's also some great resources out there through various organizations like the Human Rights Campaign or PFLAG. It's not something you have to go through alone. There are a lot of people out there who are there to support you, and I wish you best of luck. How to be an ally to the queer community and use this book to its maximum potential. Yeah, so one of the things I recommend is, I think this is a great book to have at any kind of local community center, and just make it available for people. I know Unitarian churches often have great libraries, especially, but not limited to just that. There's a group of Catholic priests who were super stoked about this book, knowing full well it was pagan, but they're like, great, we can adapt this for our context. I think throughout the book, there's both good information about how to write a ritual in general, but also gives you sort of a lens into what queer people go through. Of course, it's not an exhaustive list of every possible rite of passage. There's 20, which is a pretty good number, but there's always going to be more. But I think looking through it and seeing, oh, wow, these are some things I didn't think of as rites of passage, can be really helpful. Yes, please be careful of going to protests. Absolutely. Thank you for that reminder, Ray. Definitely talk to people who go to them regularly and get advice on how to do that safely. Ritual on name change. Elaborate, describe that. Oh, yeah. So again, I will commend the book to you, which is here on the screen, along with my contact info, because describing the whole ritual would take quite a while. But there's a lot of different things you can do. What I have in that ritual is basically mapping that name to all of your parts of self and calling in whatever spirits or energies you regularly work with and asking them to also acknowledge that this is your name. This is the name who you are. This is who you will be from now on. Yes, everyone stay safe if you are taking action this weekend, and bless you for doing so. Oh, thank you so much, Amy. I would love it if this book could be part of your library. Also, just requesting this book at your local public library, requesting it for purchase, will help it get into the hands of more folks who need it. Does the book talk about rituals for a group to do together when a community is going through a change or a specific situation? Yes. Most of the rituals in the book can be adapted for a group, and there are 4 rituals specifically for a group to do regarding celebrating specific things. But there are also, I think you could pull a lot of the ideas in it and adapt them to a group context for like a group going through a thing. Marissa, yes, absolutely. You can work with the spirits of Freddie Mercury and Emily Dickinson and many others. I currently have a tarot card for David Bowie on my altar. So yes, all of those folks can be called upon. Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you all so much. I'm glad you're getting a lot out of this. I think I'll just take like 1 or 2 more questions because I know we're a little bit over time. Thank you, Granddaughter Crow. I'm so glad you're here. I saw your name earlier in the chat and went, oh, yay. We got to meet a few years ago at the American Library Association conference. Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming. This has been so fun. I do invite you to connect with me online. There is my website is majorarqueerna.com. On Mastodon, you can find me at kind.social/@enfysbook, which also not a lot of people are on Mastodon, so it cross posts to Blue Sky, but you kind of have to search for it on Blue Sky. It's a really complicated name. You can find it on my website. Also, I'm on the open source version of Instagram, which is called PixelFed. Just note that my username is case sensitive there. And I do have a YouTube channel at majorarqueerna. So thank you. Tatiana, I highly recommend if you are going to name a queer business, definitely talk to someone in the burlesque community who's great with puns, because that is where I got that name. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and enjoy LlewellynCon. Remember, you can enter to win a copy of this and many other books through this event, so don't miss out on that opportunity. The YouTube name, I'll drop it in the chat here. majorarqueerna. There you go. Oh, thank you, Mo, for putting my Blue Sky in there. Appreciate it. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of the con.